Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Bader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. Hey friends, Jason here. In this episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with Dave White, co-owner of Quad City Safety based in Davenport, Iowa. Dave is one of those guys who thought he was taking a summer job with his fraternity brother, only to get roped into a 25-year career in the safety distribution business. With his background in accounting, Dave could have been satisfied with making sure the books were straight and the company stayed in the black. But that wasn't enough for this leader. He grabbed onto a purpose to make sure that his customer gets to go home and have supper with their family. The things on his shelf prevent people from having a really bad day. When a fall arrest device needs to be recalibrated, that piece of equipment did its job. And that user is going home tonight. I enjoyed our conversation, and I hope you do too. This episode is brought to you by HMI Performance Incentives. Unless you've been living under a rock, you've been exposed to some form of loyalty point system. What a lot of people don't understand is that these programs are not just for the big kids targeting consumers. Loyalty incentive programs are used by small to mid-sized organizations focusing on the B2B market each and every day. From service contractors to stylists, plant engineers to purchasing agents, incentive systems work. You can learn more about HMI performance incentives at www.hmiaward.com or connect with them on LinkedIn at HMI Performance Incentives. Be sure to let them know you heard about them from me, Jason Bader, on the Distribution Talk podcast. All right. So, Dave, thank you for coming on Distribution Talk. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. So tell me about your history in the distribution business. How'd you get involved with this whole thing?
Okay, so, you got to go back to the fact that I went to Murray State University, and one of my fraternity brothers' parents owned a distribution business, which is Quad City Safety.
Oh, okay.
So I got introduced to it by going back home with a fraternity brother and seeing what was going on there and dealing with the parents. But, it was a logical progression that started as something that was kind of a weekend, have fun, go see somebody's parents, to where I got a chance for an internship. And at that point in time, my background was always accounting. So my boss in the past, Mike Smeaton, kind of asked me to do some activity-based costing work for him. And
yes, the old ABCs. Okay,
I'm so take a look at some of that stuff. And that's how it all began. And at the end of my internship, I was hired on full-time, and I was pretty blessed in that. And we went forward as an employee to where I had a chance to become an owner in 2005 when we bought Mike Smeaton out. And now it's me and my business partner, Mike Smeaton. So
yes, Mike Smeaton 2.0.
Yeah, there you go. Right on.
Yeah.
So no, it's been a very gratifying life. I'm blessed to be where I'm at. And did I necessarily pick the path to distribution to start with? No, I kind of ended up with it, but it's been pretty neat. And there's a lot of good people, and I can't say enough about the opportunities that I've had.
Yeah. I'll tell you, Dave, that story, I keep hearing the story, a little different version, of course, each time, but same thing, you just kind of fall into this business, and it's that summer job, and again, you kind of hung out with Mike, your fraternity brother. Hey, why don't you come over and hang out with, take a look at our company as a friend, and all of a sudden you never leave. And it's such a common story, you don't go to school to say, boy, I want to be in distribution. And then it bites you.
No, at that point in time, there really wasn't. There were schools, but the thought process of distribution wasn't looked at as closely as it is now. So There's a lot of education now, whether it's Texas A&M or whatever that go into it, that are really advancing what we're trying to do for people out there.
Yeah. That's my business partner went to A&M, and he was kind of the first guy I ever met that, went through that school. And I was like, oh, wow, there actually is a distribution school. I did not know that. And then, of course, Purdue, and I think it's Eastern Carolina. There's a lot of different schools that have really jumped on this and adopted this. Often they like to call it something fancy like supply chain management, but it's really just what we do.
Well, one of the weird things about it was where I went to school, Murray State University, was occupational safety and health. They had a degree in that,
Okay.
and it was one of the beginning degrees. And to this day, they're still noted very much in the industry as a very good school to go to. And that's how I ended up into the safety channel. Was
Interesting.
I was
Yeah.
in accounting, other people in safety, I.e. my fraternity brother, and then it
Yeah.
kind of blended in. And here we are almost 30 years later, and I've been in Iowa ever since.
And I'll tell you, Dave, I think it's a very good balance, though, when somebody comes in with those accounting skills. I've always believed that, some of the most successful distributors, and I've seen this over the years, is that when somebody brings, especially, somebody in the ownership side brings in their accounting background or a finance background, it really helps that distributorship thrive long term.
Yeah, there's no doubt that everything is numbers. The thing that, aligns very well with me is, as with having an accounting background, like every product that we have has to fall within some specification, or there's a reason that you use it. So my brain is trained to follow,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's Z87 as when we're looking at protective eyewear, to whatever that is everything has a reason that it is, and it has rules that you have to follow, just like accounting. And so the thought process follows very much into it. But you're correct in understanding the day-to-day, because the distribution's so transactional, with the number of lines, and trying to make sure that you're profitable within that, and making sure that your cost to serve and all those little goodies, all the buzzwords that articles are being written about right now, to go back to the basics. And understanding those basics is, really how you run a successful business, especially in distribution.
Sure. Speaking of that, I have an article I have to pump out here, but it's funny, kind of laugh at, you're like, okay, how am I going to spin this one this time? It's like, what word am I going to spin a little different? But, it's funny, going back to that activity-based costing thing that you were invited in. My suspicion is that Mike Sr. heard like a Merrifield or somebody like that.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden got excited and said, oh, we got to try this activity-based costing thing.
Yeah.
Complicated? Tell me about the process, if you don't mind going back in history a little bit.
I definitely can go back in history. So realistically, activity-based costing, is you're trying to understand cost behaviors. You pull them up, and then you got to come up with something that you can count or enumerate to pull out of your database, to then throw it in that model and kind of kick out what your cost probably is. And it's not an exact science.
No.
So activity-based costing can be done really, really easily. I mean, you can kind of take your cost pools and throw them maybe one or two, figure out what that driver is, and then figure out how to count it. And real quickly, at least get an idea of where is your profit drain. The problem that every distributor has is we fight to get customers. Then we look at a report that says that is an ugly baby, and you don't, and you literally don't want it, but you end up carrying that thing around because you don't want to put it down because you've worked so hard to get it. So even though you may be able to, really go through the data and figure it out, a lot of times you don't follow the science.
So, I've been around the customer segmentation, profitability analysis for a long time now. When I learned this back in 2000, just like 2x4 to the back of the head, it's like that. Wow, this is amazing. And you're right. When you start seeing the names that are in the negative, you're like, yes. I don't want to look at this anymore, man. I'm going to throw this thing away. This is bad.
Yeah, you're correct. Is the truth sitting right in front of you, but it's just hard to, it's a hard pill to swallow. It really is.
It is. I usually tell people, look, this is sometimes called the Jack Daniels or Maalox report, because you probably want to have one of the two of those next to you the first time you read it. So
yeah, and I mean those are hard conversations too.
Yes,
is to sit down with, because usually that's what it entails. Is it's not that things aren't fixable; it's hard conversations.
Sure. It's emotional. It's very emotional. As you said, it's, you worked so hard to get this customer, and then it's an ugly baby. And you're like, oh, yeah, this ain't good. This, how did I do this? Why did I do that?
I don't even want to look at it.
That's great. No, as I said, I appreciate, and again, from the accounting side is, that realistic look at the business and looking at, hey, when do things not make sense? And I think that's really important to an element to drag in, because often, let's just face it, distribution companies are littered with sales-minded individuals who are very emotional, and, they like bright, shiny objects. And, sometimes they get swayed by that, and they forget about well, is this a good decision or a bad decision?
Yeah. And a lot of times it helps to have those guys in the room, but to have that other side to where you can work through it, because a lot of times just because it makes financial sense doesn't, like that report, maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't. And I think that distributors that really rock it are blending and making decisions that sometimes may make them less profitable, but there has to be an end game.
Mm-hmm.
And figuring out what that end game is a lot of times pretty tough.
Absolutely, and it can lead to lengthy discussions and roundabouts and backing down a couple times, and then okay, we'll come back when we're a little more level-headed. But if I could just segueing here a little bit over to something that you had written a while back or posted, or I think it may even have come up in that contractor supply article or something about the purpose of the company. We don't just sell safety stuff.
Well, I mean, everybody gets so into part numbers and they become very transactional. And really, the spirit of our business is we work every day to try to make sure that somebody goes home to the dinner table.
Yeah.
And that's at like 20,000 foot looking down. But how we do that is through whether it's helping with training, but realistically, everything that we sell is meant to help somebody get hurt less.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people, they hear safety supplies and they're like, now I'm going to be safe. Well, no, our goal is to limit damage or limit exposure. And that's if you're trained right, you use it the right way, because everything has restrictions, limitations that you have to work through. And that's where our product line, as well as a lot of other ones that are out there, need that specialist. It needs somebody that you can't be all things to all people. And, for instance, if you have a leaky faucet, you don't call a carpenter to come in there and fix it. He can probably get in there and figure it out. But, at the end of the day, what are you really going to have? You're going to have something that's fixed for now, but it's not really a solution. Right. And that's where I think a lot of the specialty distributors that are out there kind of play into realistically helping people and providing value. Mm-hmm. Because often I think that the mentality is, well, it's less expensive. Well, what does that mean? Well, in our business, if we're looking and all of a sudden we overlook something that, let's say we're putting our hand in a chemical every day and we're just not paying attention to the MSDS, and then 30 years later we have a cancer outbreak because of this chemical that nobody paid attention to. It was there, somebody knew it, but we didn't really protect people, and now there's a hidden cost that happens. And that's through litigation. It can be through work comp. So there's a lot of other hidden costs that when you really look at total cost, I think people kind of lose. And there's a lot of studies out there like the National Safety Council, NSC. There's a white paper where they went into numerous different types of, whether it's manufacturing, construction, and they looked at cost over I forget, I'd have to go back and look at the paper, but it was over a period of time. And they kind of proved that for every dollar you put in, you get like $2.25 back. Mm-hmm. And that's not just buying the products, that's buying the training and spending the time with the people. So it's realistically not about the product, it's about the environment and looking at things from a long-term standpoint and making sure that you're lining that stuff up correctly.
Yeah, Dave, I think, it's really, the more you talk about this, I mean, I'm thinking about people can't get that type of education or that type of advice, by looking at a catalog and again, I'm dating myself there by looking at catalogs, but looking online. If you take your business to its purpose, not necessarily the transaction, but the purpose, then it cannot be a picture and a couple fancy words. It's just not going to fulfill the purpose that you're talking about.
Correct. And you got to throw people into it, because most of what we sell, somebody is wearing, or it's a very personal item. I mean, let's face it, everybody has a certain type of shirt that they love. Well, so that's what you're bringing people into it on top of that. And so not only is it something it's emotional, there's a lot of things that go into getting the right item. And it's not, to your point, is reading oh, this has this buzzword and this buzzword, so check the box. You can do that, but then you're going to be the company that has a high injury because nobody wants to wear the safety glasses because they're a visitor spec. They're clunky. They look stupid. And
Right.
I mean, sometimes people will wear PPE just because it looks nice or it's cool. So paying attention to factors like that, you don't see in a catalog. And those are things that with 25 years of experience in the business, I can tell you, I've seen it work and I've seen good safety programs develop that way.
It's interesting, David, again, dating ourselves here. I grew up in the construction supply business and, we had the 31 flavors of safety glasses and all this. But, thinking about, though, the advancements in actually aesthetics, of these products to get people to actually want to use them. I think that's actually a very interesting point because I can remember, the clunky visitor glass or the cheaper. And then there was the really expensive stuff that nobody, wanted, whether it was, at that time, I think it was the Uvex glass or something, it was the expensive one and people were afraid to pay for that. And we were afraid to stock it because it was just really an exclusive item. But I think there's been a tremendous evolution. I mean, I look at people like an Ergodyne, for example, that make attractive stuff. Or there's all of these different manufacturers have realized that if it's not attractive, people will not wear it.
That's very true. I mean, comfort also. So there's a lot of factors that, again, like we were going back, it's personal items. It's it's safety, but it's something that you can gain productivity by, let's say, making something cooler. So the construction guy is not dying or is more comfortable. So again, those are looking at that. What do you get when you spend something? Productivity is something that is really, people don't ever do a good job of measuring that. So if you have to pull somebody out of a work environment because, let's say, it's an airline system and you didn't put a vortex cooler that can cool them in that suit down, and all of a sudden they have heat exhaustion because it's hot, all of a sudden we can have an incident. But the unmeasured thing is the fact that he's not productive. He's only going to do what he can do. And with spending a little bit of money on the front end can drive things like productivity. Things like proud to do the job or happy. I mean, happy people do good work. I mean, I've seen that.
I would agree. Yeah, I would agree.
Happy people really do good work and making people happy. And safety's come to the front. And one of the funny things is I've walked around for, again, that 25 years of my life going PPE. and nobody got it until COVID, because all of a sudden on the TV every night they're talking about PPE. But now I sit there and I'm like, oh my God, they think PPE is just masks.
Right. You just got shot in the foot right there.
Yeah. I was excited at first, and then I'm like, oh boy, now they've scoped it. Everybody thinks PPE means respirator, basically.
It's funny. Yeah, it is kind of interesting when all of a sudden your industry or niche hits the news, and you're like, oh man. It's like, oh man. It's like, for me, it was supply chain. All of a sudden, everybody want to talk about supply chain. Oh, aren't you an expert in supply chain? I'm like, oh, not like these guys. I don't want any part of that. I don't want any part of what they're talking about.
Yeah. I've got a limited number of SKUs to a limited number of people.
That's it. That's all I want to talk.
Yeah. I'll talk micro. Don't give me the macro.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want that big side. So it was interesting. Going back to that purpose. I saw there was a post or an image that you posted a while back, and it was of a calibration. Yeah, a fall arrest item, and it had taken a fall, so you could see the red band.
Yeah. So basically, when you look at that, was a retrieval system. But the long story short is, when you visually inspect it, you could see that had taken a fall.
Yes.
So that is something that, you kind of look at it, and unless you really know what you're looking at, I mean, I get excited when I see that stuff, because I'm like, man, we did our job. That guy, I mean, how bad would he got hurt? I don't know, but we saved him from having a bad day. And
that's right.
That's a really awesome feeling. Yeah. And to have a good day, that's pretty cool. And to think about, somebody returning home, that's really cool stuff. And that's what drives me to do a lot of the stuff that I do and be part of that community, whether it is on our customer side. So American Society of Safety Professionals and being part of those groups. My brethren in the AD Safety Network. So again, a consortium of people that are really embracing and trying to, like in AD Safety Network, we have a C certification where we're training people up on safety so that it's not just talking about yellow ones, pink ones, and blue ones, and we want dozens or cases. We get them into talking about the hazards and having conversations. So having those conversations leads to getting that right fall protection device to where the guy uses it and then has a good day. So it's a logical progression that you kind of have to work through. But at the end, it's really a neat thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, when I looked at that photo that you had posted and the comments that you were making, it was really profound in that it was not just something that had to be fixed. It was, man, that saved somebody, as you said, a really bad day or could have been their life. Yes. And I thought that was just, that was really profound. And so I think that I've seen this, again, working around contractors most of my life. I've seen this where the safety side has been a burden, and it's to protect against the OSHA people coming in and getting you, and ticketing you and things like that. But then really we've got to redirect that thinking and redirect it and say, well, actually, this can save you from having that bad day or allow you to go home and have dinner with your family. And that's what it's about.
Well, I mean, humans are inherently pretty stupid, and we do stupid stuff. And
like climbing the pallet rack in the warehouse and things like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You mean that?
Yeah, but it's the whole thing of, there's a couple things there. One is, it gets into if you see somebody doing something, for Christ's sake, say something.
Right.
But it's that, along with, employers have an obligation to help people understand where they can get hurt. I mean, you sit there and look at things like lockout, tagout. Those can be really, really bad days.
Yes, they can. Yeah.
And getting your Joe Public employee to understand, okay, we have all this residual energy is going to smash you unless you follow this. And making sure that we've made them aware that this can happen. And now we have to educate them on that process of, you need to do step 2, step 3, and making sure that we retrain, because unfortunately, again, stupid humans walking around here, we forget a lot. So you don't talk about it once and then leave it.
Right.
You have to touch it. And you have to continually go back and review it to make sure that you're on your top.
Speaking of that continual review, if I think back at the safety specialists that I've known, really their job is so much more than just transactional selling. It's really more the education side. I mean, I can think about some of the fall protection guys early on. If you were trying to think of the names escaping me right now, and you would know it probably up in Minnesota, not 3M, but the
DBI Sala.
Thank you. Oh my God. Yeah, that was killing me there.
Yeah, DBI, and then you had Sala, and then they came together. And
yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think I was really impressed how serious the rep was about it, that you were very serious in that training. It was no joke. And I thought that was just always fascinating, that people took it that seriously.
Yeah. Because again, I mean, when you're working at heights, I mean, your life is literally on a line.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah, I can remember that. That whole with the line across the two from the two towers and that drop. And I think that if you think about your typical distributor salesperson, that isn't always. They don't always have the mentality of deep education like that. So I think it does take a certain individual.
Well, I think it depends on who you are. Sometimes you're a logistics partner, and my company, we're not a logistics partner.
Yeah.
We're not getting you the least expensive piece, widget, or whatever. We've got a purpose for everything we're doing. So it's not going to be the cheapest, but your outcome is going to be the best if we work together. And it's not a one-sided transaction. It needs to be, if I'm doing my job right as a distributor sales rep, I am at the end user. I am part of the safety community. I am helping guide them. They know more about their processes than I do, but I'm helping make sure that I go, well, did you think about this? or there's this product that I have seen work other places, or you're overlooking this standard. So trying to make sure that we roll up our knowledge and hand
Mhm.
it to them in the transaction. So it's really kind of a bundled cost. And a lot of time people like an unbundled, naked, lowest price.
Right,
And
right.
it's something that we're not wired that way. We're not geared that way. It just is what it is.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, do you think that because you need that total cost discussion and you need to educate in that regard, that you kind of insulate yourself from that commoditization of the vertical or the niche here, the safety niche?
Well, if our customers get it,
Yeah.
they get it. But for instance, we sell Band-Aids. If somebody, all they want to do is buy Band-Aids, we should probably divorce them,
Yeah.
because there's a reason why they are buying Band-Aids. And it's because most likely it's a hand protection thing, where if they would just spend $1 or $2 more to get some level of cut resistance in the glove, we wouldn't sell them Band-Aids. But they don't want to have that conversation. Will I sell them Band-Aids? I guess I will. But at the end of the day, they're not the kind of people that I like to deal with. The people that I like to deal with are the people that really get it and want to jump in there. And realistically, it's not about cost at that point. It's about
Mhm.
outcome. And getting from cost to outcome takes a lot of trust between the two parties, because if they don't trust us or think that we have that expertise, then that relationship is not there. And with no trust becomes no transaction, or to the transaction that I want to do.
Right, right. Well, and the transaction you want to do actually is a lengthy transaction. It is. It takes time to educate. It takes time. It's not a quick hit. So I guess taking this a little further, if you want to spread your wings and hit, try to get more customers educated and whatnot, that means either a lot of boots on the street or some way to deliver that message in mass.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're trying to do a little bit of that through our YouTube channel, to where we're talking about hazards so that I can, break them down piece by piece.
Mhm.
Because again, it's not always about the product. Sometimes it's about the process or the thing that's going on. For instance, you go into respiratory and making sure that people understand what an APF is for a respirator. And it's, oh my goodness, here comes another acronym. Well, it's kind of like when I start talking about that, I get my ping pong balls out and I start talking about parts per million to give them a visual of, here's what we're talking about. It doesn't have to be this nerdy, scary science.
Sure.
There is nerdy, scary science in all that stuff, but
Yeah.
to break it down to where somebody can digest it and remember that,
Mhm.
instead of, oh man, here we go. We got to wear this crap again. It doesn't
Right.
work, or I don't like it, or it's uncomfortable. So as soon as my boss leaves, I'm taking it off, and there we go. We've just killed everything that we were trying to do.
Sure, sure. It's interesting. Speaking of that YouTube channel, and I know you dipped your toe into the podcasting environment with
Yeah.
Dave and Bacon's Safety Tales.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
it went down there. So these types of mass spreading of information, these types of mass media, have you seen a return on investment from these things? I mean, do you see people, or are you building awareness?
I want to believe that we are. Can I dollarize that right now?
Yeah.
I'm not smart enough to figure out how to do that. But it really, when you look at the economy that we live in, is you have to do that with the thought process that people will reward you for doing that. And the communities usually do a pretty good job of that. It's not a perfect science,
Hmm.
but I think as long as you stay in there with good intent, somebody will see it. And it's bigger than our cause. I think is a pretty big cause,
Right,
and
right.
and it's kind of like you got to believe everything and try to help as many people, even if they don't buy from you.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. You couldn't have
Yeah,
said it better right there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's really, you are there to educate regardless of the outcome. And I think that's it.
I have passionate conversations with people that have never bought from me just because I'm passionate about what I do. I really care, and I want to make sure that people do, whether they buy it from me or they buy it from somebody else. I mean, would I prefer that? Yeah. Is that kind of,
Sure.
to be a going concern? Is that important? Yeah. But,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but it's not the only thing.
Right.
It's
Right.
not the only thing. And I know that when you look at a lot of the world operates selfishly, and you watch it die. And I think through being unselfish, that usually you're rewarded for being unselfish.
I would agree with that. Wow. Well, Dave, hey, I really appreciate you sharing this, and it's really given me a lot of thought, though, about that purpose, kind of almost a purpose-driven organization.
Well, I think that the world's starving for passion.
Yeah.
And there are so many ways and areas in distribution to get passionate.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, it's not just safety, it's everything out there. And when I get excited, I think that having people like myself that do what I do is going to keep everything from becoming transactional, because the internet really makes everything transactional and it's not any experience. So, I challenge any independent or macro distributor to really make sure that they're having some passion. There needs to be a little sizzle with the steak.
You got that right, my friend. All right, Dave. Hey, again, thanks for taking the time. I truly appreciate it. And it was just a pleasure speaking with you.
Okay, thanks for inviting me.
You bet. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider hitting that subscribe button. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area on your podcast application or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by Andrea Klunder and Edwin Ruiz at the Creative Imposter Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, The Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.